This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.
Welcome to From the Newsroom, a production of the Western Wisconsin Press Club in cooperation with Community TV. I'm Henry Lippold, Professor Emeritus of Communication and Journalism at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire and a member of the Press Club. The university is celebrating its centennial, 1916 to 2016. The celebrations are in order, and the university is having a number of events. So Professor Susan Harrison was called out of retirement to serve as Centennial Celebration Coordinator, and she's with us today. So what are some of the events?
We have an exciting year planned. We started celebrating on May of commencement services this year, and we'll go until May commencement services next year. And right now, coming up this weekend, we want everybody to come out for Friday night, Varsity Night Live. The alumni reception, though, is a great place to meet Emeriti faculty and staff, as well as all the alums that we're inviting to come. That's Friday from 4:30 to 7:30. Get your tickets now, the Service Center and Davie Center. Then Saturday, of course, is homecoming we're celebrating. We have a gala, a Centennial Gala on October the 8th coming up. And that is where we have commissioned, the foundation has 5 different musical pieces. It's a wonderful time to listen to music from 1916 and 2016. And then our big celebration, our birthday cake, 100 feet of birthday cake. Whoa, on October 19th. That's 100 years earlier when we celebrated the beginning of the school. It started when the governor was here, and hopefully we'll have a great celebration on October 19th this year, and everybody's invited to come down and have a piece of birthday cake.
Now, are there some events that are going to come on later?
Later we will sprinkle unit events and department events all throughout the year, and then next May 1st through 6th, the teacher education program, for which we started 100 years ago, will be celebrating. And then we'll have a culminating event toward the middle of May.
Sounds very good. Sounds very good. That's about it.
That's our great year. And go to UWEC100.com to get a full schedule of events. That's UWEC100.com.
I think we can put that up.
I think so. That'd be great.
Well, thank you very much, Susan Harrison,
You're
for
most
taking
welcome.
time out to be with us today.
Most welcome. My pleasure.
We're going to look at what might be the most significant event in the centennial year, the writing of a new history of the university. The authors are with us, History Professor James Oberly and Emeritus History Professor Robert Gough. The book is Building Excellence, the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, 1916-2016. Welcome, gentlemen.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, Henry, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Who proposed the idea of a new history?
Well, this was an idea from the University Foundation, and there's been a lot of planning that's gone on in the Centennial. I know your viewers have heard some programs, but it goes back almost a decade. And as I think Bob Gough mentioned off camera just before we started, there is an existing history. It was completed in 1976. It's a very good history, but we need an updated one that covers the entire centennial, especially the last 40 years or so.
Now, you've described this new one as honest and comprehensive. What does that mean?
Well, we try to cover all aspects of the history of the university, both the administration and the policies of the presidents and the policies of the regents, those sorts of official aspects. But we also want to look at the student life and what it was like to teach, what it was like to be in the classroom, what students did outside the classroom, and what the relationship of the community was to the university as well. That's what we mean by comprehensive.
And honest?
I'll try and take that one. Bob took the one on comprehensive, and I fully agree. Honest, I think you could understand in relation to other histories of other universities, which are often celebratory, highlights only positive achievements, coffee table books, Henry, to be blunt. Ours is no coffee table book. There are accomplishments, there are successes, there are many achievements in there, but there's some setbacks too. And we address those. That's the honest part, and we think it makes for a better book.
I did find some malefactors in there proposed. So we all know that this university didn't just spring up suddenly. Can you go through the various steps, starting with the normal? And you can work together on that.
Well,
I'll defer to Bob.
its real origins are in the expansion of public education in the 19th century, and all across the United States, and of course in Wisconsin. And that created a demand for more teachers to teach these expanding schools. And one stream of these teachers came from these normal schools that were single-purpose institutions just to prepare teachers. And eventually there would be 9 of them in Wisconsin. And by the beginning of the 20th century, the local community around Eau Claire felt that there was a need for a normal school in Eau Claire to provide the teachers for this region. So then that began the political lobbying then in Madison that led in 1909 to the legislature to designate Eau Claire as the site for the next normal school.
Well, beyond the next normal school, then what came?
Well, they had to get designated as the normal school. Next, they had to get the land, and that was provided by the city. And it was the city's responsibility to buy the land, which is now the part of the lower campus, and then give that to the state as the site for the normal school. That was the next thing that had to be done. Then the state had to appropriate money for a building, which became what is now Schofield Hall, that was completed in 1916. Then they had to hire a president, Harvey Schofield, and Schofield then recruited 16 or 17 people as the initial faculty. So finally they were ready to go then in the fall of 1916.
So Henry, our name then was not the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire. We were Eau Claire State Normal Institute, right?
Normal school.
Normal school, okay. We did not give college degrees at first, and it was a full decade before we became Eau Claire State Teachers College, correct? Right. Which meant we gave bachelor degrees in education. We were a full college then. And for much of our early history, first 50 years or so, people who came to Eau Claire came to a teacher's college then. They came to train in teacher education. Not all became educators, but that was our purpose. So for almost one of our longest stretches, we were Eau Claire State Teachers College for a good 24 years, right?
From 1927 to 1951, yeah.
That's 24 years.
Yeah,
Then we changed our name to Wisconsin State College Eau Claire. We still did teacher education, that was our most important function, but we also became a liberal arts college. And I think Bob and I agree, that's central to our identity as a ongoing university. This is a place to come and study and prepare for profession in education in those days. It's also a place that's deeply grounded in the liberal arts, in the sciences, in the humanities, in the fine arts, in the social sciences. So starting in 1951, a student could come here and major in, soon enough, journalism, Henry, and not prepare for a career in teaching. So we were a state college that was broader than a teacher's college, and we had a very successful run in the 1950s as a state college of a couple thousand students at most, between 1,500 and 2,000 students, still on our same lower campus. And it wasn't until what year, Bob, that we started expanding to the upper campus?
Well, in the late 1950s.
Okay.
They acquired land on the top of the bluff, and also acquired Putnam Park in the late 1950s, and began expanding in that direction. That's where the additional dorms would be built, and the student facilities on the upper campus, very much in the 1960s, built up. And also then eventually would expand across the river. Around by 1970, after the footbridge was built, another dimension to the campus was added across the river along Water Street.
So the university is a significant landowner in the city. I believe we have 300 acres or so.
Something like that, yeah.
I think, Henry, this is typical of American higher education. Most schools start as one building, Old Main. I think that was probably true at Harvard College in 1636.
Yeah.
It was certainly true at College William and Mary in 1693. And some campuses have moved physically. They're no longer there. They're in a different site. My alma mater is in a newer campus than Eau Claire is, even though mine claims to be older. So colleges move and they also expand, and that is part of our history. That we still have that mission, still very important in Eau Claire, of preparing teachers for work in the public schools, but we've taken on other missions, especially our liberal arts and then professional schools.
Yeah,
so
nursing, business get added.
Okay, so we'll keep that story going chronologically. We're up to the 1960s. We've expanded our land base. We're still a modest-sized college. But there was increased need for advanced skills in people, not just the undergraduate bachelor's degree, but the master's degree. And Eau Claire became, in 1964, a university, Henry. A university gives graduate degrees as well as undergraduate degrees. We started giving master's degrees, and we very much expanded our professional programs. Right. Bob, you mentioned nursing, with School of Business, which became eventually our very sizable faculty and student body. So the university's mission diversified some as it grew, and that's a big change in the 1960s.
I seem to remember that when I started at college in Oshkosh, you could come for 2 years, and then you'd have to leave if you wanted a full liberal arts program.
That was the idea before 1951. That there were students, if you were interested in the liberal arts, or if you're interested in journalism, or if you were interested in architecture or whatever, you could spend 2 years at Oshkosh or Eau Claire. But you then have to transfer to, usually to the University of Wisconsin, then to complete your education. So that was a big move, and it was to go to a 4-year liberal arts program, and that was in large part as a result of the demands from the community, who wanted to see these programs added locally so that their children could go to become journalists by staying at Eau Claire and not have to transfer to Madison.
We say journalists, of course, because that's your profession, Henry, but there are many others. So, but we have a different name, don't we? University of Wisconsin Eau Claire. So there's one last name change. We're a university, a dynamically growing one. Wisconsin State University Eau Claire and your alma mater, Wisconsin State University Oshkosh, were the two big ones in the state university system. And it seemed like, as one of our governors said, there was an arms race. Who could build more buildings? Who could add more programs? The University of Wisconsin or the Wisconsin State University system? And we had a legislature and a governor in 1971 who said, enough, let's merge them into one UW system. Everybody will take the name UW and then their location. So UWO, UW Eau Claire, UW Madison, UW Milwaukee.
In your view, has that worked out?
Well, it's made changes. UW Eau Claire is a different place than it would have been if it stayed on its own. Now, whether that's good or bad is subjective. It depends on your point of view. But the place is different. And there were impetus that came from the central administration in the 70s and 80s to do things that I don't think would have been done, at least as quickly, at Eau Claire in terms of developing women's studies programs and developing general programs of gender equality and things, women's athletics, just to name one area. Much of the impetus of this comes down from Madison, and I don't think that would have happened as quickly, at least, if we hadn't become part of a system. So it makes a difference. It's up to your point of view to say whether it's better or not.
Going back to the starting point, can you say there's a day when this centennial started? Would that have been when they dedicated, Old Main?
Yes, I believe that's October 20th, and that's coming up, and there will be a commemorative celebration of that planned. Another date would be the first day of classes, and that was just celebrated last week by a couple of programs on campus.
What day was that?
That was last Tuesday.
No, I mean, what was that first day of classes?
September 23rd.
No, it would have been last week. It was September, whatever the date, whatever last
September
Tuesday
20th, that was it, yeah.
whatever the date was last Tuesday, September 20th.
So, Henry, how interesting that that's one thing that hasn't changed much. The school calendar, still shaped by the agricultural work year, that Eau Claire students wouldn't start till late September, so we still have generous summer vacations, Henry.
Well, we don't have beanies anymore.
No, we don't. Yes, for your viewers, the beanie was required of first-year students in the 1960s. They would be singled out as first years, and they would be hazed gently sometimes, but sometimes roughly. And then at homecoming time, and it's homecoming this weekend at Eau Claire, the first-year freshmen would throw their beanies on a bonfire and become full-fledged members of the community.
Yeah. The enrollment, of course, grew tremendously. Now it was, what, 11,500 at one time, and now it's less?
It's gone down a little bit. I think it was a little bit more than 11.5 at its peak. It's come down by a few hundred over the last 5 years. But in general, I think you can say over the last 30 years, it's fluctuated by a few hundred one way or another. But there was, in contrast to tremendous growth from 1952 to 1975, there's just enormous growth. But the past 40 years has been roughly, in the 11,000 range. So it's stayed an institution of approximately the same size now for quite a few decades.
I think that's our physical plant. I don't think we can hold many more students. We don't have the dormitory space for the first years and the classroom
Right.
space. Bob is right. It was a long time also for after that growth spurt before we got another academic building. And we're very proud of the new Centennial Hall. If you haven't been or your viewers haven't been, it's a spectacular
You should
building.
go to that, folks.
Yeah.
So, that just about wraps up our segment of this program.
So Henry, hold up the book for your viewers so they can see the attractive cover
We've
there.
scanned it.
Oh, I see.
And
Excellent.
It will be there, but this, folks, is a weighty tome, and it's good.
And it's available at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire bookstore.
Now, one quick thing, there's another version, isn't there? Something called Documents?
Yes, there's this. We think we wanted this to be fun to read as well as being a weighty tome. So one thing we don't have in the book are the footnotes, the documentation, and there is a scholar's version which has full documentation, 1,600 and some footnotes, and that's available electronically for people who are really interested. You can go through the University Archives website and find that.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Henry,
Well,
for
thanks for
having
having
us.
us,
This
Henry.
was fun.
It's our pleasure.
Okay, goodbye.
And now meet Gregory Koken, University of Wisconsin Eau Claire Archivist, keeper of the University Archives. When you learned that the Centennial book was being planned, what did you do?
I came to the university in 2011, January of 2011, and my predecessor had left me a note and informed me that Doctors Bob Gough and Jim Oberly were preparing a book for the Centennial. When I came, there were a number of things that I knew the University Archives needed in order to be ready to kind of provide Bob and Jim with the access that they needed in order to pull that information together in preparation for that book. Work started immediately on my part in order to be prepared for that. There's a number of key information sources in the University Archives. Obviously, chancellor's correspondence files, subject files, but as well as student newspapers, yearbooks, and literally thousands of photographs. And the photographs were the starting place for me. Photographs tell a very powerful story. They're an amazing primary source helping us to understand our past. And to be honest, the photographs were not in the best condition. And so we really started working on organizing our photographs collection and bringing some order to that chaos, so that when the time came, the centennial year, we knew that we would be able to easily access those photographs that Bob and Jim and today many others would need to utilize. If I may, there's even more to that story though. Beyond simply organizing those resources and making sure that they're accessible to researchers and other scholars, we also saw an opportunity there. It was an opportunity for us to be able to share those amazing resources with the public. And so we began about 3 years ago digitizing those and a number of other resources in the university archives and putting that digitized content online to be able to share with the communities who are interested in our history.
Well, now, even as we speak, new history is being made. Do you have to keep an eye out for it, or how does it get in?
That's a great question, and perhaps one of the greatest challenges that face an archivist today. In the past, an archivist was really more reactive. They would wait for the material's useful life to end, and then they would be brought to the university archives, or the archivist would go out and collect those materials. We live in a digital age today. The chancellor is no longer, typing correspondence and signing his name at the bottom. Today, that correspondence is all email. From our web pages to our social media, it's very different today. And so an archivist must be proactive and work with the record's creators to be able to capture that history.
But you don't have anything on paper.
We still receive a lot on paper, but the truth is that a lot of the important stuff is no longer on paper. And as an archivist, we use a number of different tools, the ability to preserve digital files, as well as be able to archive web pages in order to capture those materials. A lot of the principles of working in archives remain the same, though, the way we organize, describe, and ultimately present those materials to researchers and the public. It's just the medium has changed.
Are you afraid that you might not be able to retrieve them? I mean, we used to have square things you put in a slot.
Yeah, there's no doubt that technology changes rapidly. Year after year, we see changes. As an archivist, what we try to do is work with established standards. We try to look at the relatively short lifespan of new technology and try to understand what are the most commonly used file formats and what are the best standards, the best practices that we have in order to save those digital files today. It's certainly a challenge, and scholars and historians often talk about this digital dark age. So whereas Bob and Jim were able to look at a wide variety of paper-based materials in preparing this new history of the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, it's possible that future scholars will struggle a little bit more. Certainly prior to 2011 when I came, it's possible that there is a decade, maybe more, of our history which in part has been lost. But one of the advantages of working in the digital environment is that with paper, when it's gone, unless there's a copy created. But with digital files, there's often a trail, and there's a lot more copies that are produced. And so it's a little more work for me as an archivist to kind of trace back and find those pieces. But we have been successful being able to acquire emails and materials from chancellors such as Donald Mash prior to my own time as the archivist, and be able to get those into the university archives and begin the process of preserving and making them accessible to the public.
Well, now you have some paper copies of things, and you showed me that one on top.
Sure. Yeah, I brought a few, let's say, treasures from the university archives with me today. One of them, and it's in remarkably good shape, it's the very first catalog that was prepared for the school back in July of 1916. It's a very powerful source of information because it helps us to understand who were the teachers at the school at that time, what was tuition, what was school life like by being able to look through something like the catalog from that very first school year.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Now, you have to do some outside work for the university, posters and things like that?
Yeah, so obviously the Centennial presents a number of opportunities for the university archives. Beyond simply helping researchers study and understand the history of the university, I've had the opportunity to prepare a number of exhibits and a few other materials that are shared with the public during the course of the Centennial. One of those projects, a major project for me and the university archives, was the preparation of a traveling exhibit. That exhibit consists of 10 pull-up banners, and it's highly mobile. So during the course of the Centennial, those pull-up banners are going to be on display in quite a few of the buildings on campus. And certainly when there's a major event happening during the Centennial year, you can expect to see that traveling exhibit will be on display and sharing some of those great stories and photographs and ultimately the history of the university with the public.
Briefly, you're an alum. Does that help?
It's a tremendous help. So I graduated in 2007. And when I was an undergraduate student, I studied history here and also had the opportunity to work in the university archives for several years as a student assistant. Certainly in my case, coming back in 2011 after my graduate education and a few years working elsewhere, I came into the job knowing a little bit about the history of the university. I've certainly expanded on that knowledge substantially in my time at the university since then, but I also knew about the university archives. I knew what types of materials had been preserved and made accessible to the public. So in many ways, I did not have to come in 2011 and spend a year getting to know the place. I was able to hit the ground running and really knew what needed to be done in order to get us here today.
Well, with that, I have to say our time is up. Thank you, Gregory Koken, University Archivist, and thank you, History Professors James Oberly and Emeritus History Professor Robert Gough, and Centennial Celebration Coordinator Susan Harris. I'm Henry Lippold. Thanks for watching.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.